My father laughed, so hard he had to grab the edge of the table. Not a surprised laugh. Not nervous. The kind meant to humiliate. My resignation letter was still folded in my purse when he said, "You quit?" Just like that. And shook his head, smiling at everyone else. My chest burned. My ears rang. I watched my mother stare at her plate like it might save me. My brother smirked into his wine glass. My sister-in-law whispered something behind her hand. That was the moment something in me went quiet. Not broken. Not defeated. Just still. Like the second before thunder when the air gets heavy and everything waits. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just felt my hands tighten around my glass as his laughter faded into approval from the room. "Give it 2 weeks," he said, leaning back in his chair like he'd already won. "She'll be begging for another entry-level role." The others nodded. My mother finally looked up, but she didn't defend me. She never did. That night, lying in my apartment, the title formed in my head like a promise I was making to myself. My dad laughed when I quit. The contract ended the joke. I didn't know yet how true it would become, but I felt it, deep in my bones. My name is Eliza Moore. I'm 32 years old, white, American, and I was raised to believe approval was something you earned by staying small, staying quiet, staying exactly where people expected you to be. What they didn't know, what my father couldn't see past his own assumptions, was that I didn't quit to escape. I quit to move. There's a difference. Escaping is running from something. Moving is running towards something better. I had spent 6 months planning my exit. 6 months of late-night calls, careful research, building relationships with people who saw what I could do instead of who my father thought I was. Growing up, my father rewarded obedience, not insight. He praised people who stayed where they were placed, who nodded along, who never questioned the way things had always been done. When I challenged decisions at family dinners, asked why we couldn't try something new, he called it attitude. When I succeeded quietly, brought home awards from school or landed my first real job, he called it luck. That dinner wasn't new. It was just public. He'd been laughing at me my whole life. The difference was now I had witnesses. Now the humiliation had an audience. And now I had nothing left to lose by proving him wrong. The job I quit was safe and suffocating. Meetings where decisions were already made before anyone walked in the room. Promotions promised during reviews, then delayed 6 months, then a year, then indefinitely. My ideas went into reports that others presented. My work became their success. I didn't storm out. I didn't send an angry email or slam doors or burn bridges. I resigned after lining up interviews, references, and a role that didn't need permission from anyone who'd spent years underestimating me. I gave 2 weeks' notice. I trained my replacement. I left professionally. And my father still called it a tantrum. My father worked for a mid-sized logistics firm called Hartwell Distribution. At every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering, he bragged about one account. "Our biggest contract," he'd say, swirling his scotch, "keeps the lights on. Without it, half the company would be gone." He'd list numbers, percentages, projections. He'd name the client like they were family. TechCore Solutions. I listened every time. I remembered names. I remembered numbers. I remembered exactly how much that contract meant to him. Not because I planned anything. Just because when someone talks that much about something, you start to notice. You start to pay attention to the cracks in their confidence. My new job didn't come with applause or celebration. Just a quiet desk on the 14th floor, clear authority, and a title that mattered more than it sounded. Procurement analyst. People hear analyst and think paperwork. They're not wrong, but paperwork runs everything. I was part of a procurement team that evaluated vendors, assessed contract renewals, and decided who stayed and who got replaced. Long-term partnerships weren't guaranteed. They were earned. Every year. With performance. With innovation. With respect for the process. I didn't think about my father when I accepted the position. Not consciously. Not yet. I just wanted to do work that mattered. 3 months in, a familiar company name appeared in my queue. Hartwell Distribution. My pulse didn't spike. I didn't smile or feel smug or imagine revenge. I just opened the file like it was any other vendor up for renewal. Their contract with TechCore Solutions had been in place for 8 years. Automatic renewals every 12 months. No competitive bidding. No reevaluation. Just comfortable predictability. My job was to change that. Not because of my father. Because that's what procurement does. We protect the company's interests. We ask questions. We make sure partnerships still make sense. And if they don't, we move on. I told my supervisor about the connection immediately. Transparency matters. Boundaries matter. I explained that my father worked for Hartwell, that I'd grown up hearing about this contract, and that I wanted to handle it correctly. She looked at the file, then at me. "You're not on the sales side," she said. "You're on the evaluation committee. That's fine. Just document everything and stay objective." I nodded. Objective. I could do that. In fact, I'd been trained my whole life to stay objective when it came to my father. To ignore my feelings. To focus on facts. This would be easy. Their performance metrics were acceptable. Not impressive. Not disastrous. Just acceptable. On-time delivery hovered around 92%. Industry standard was 95. Cost overruns happened twice in the past year. Minor, but documented. Customer service response times were slow. Complaints had increased. Nothing catastrophic. Nothing that would trigger immediate termination. But acceptable doesn't win renewals anymore. Not in a competitive market. Not when other companies are hungry and innovative and willing to work harder for your business. I made notes. I highlighted concerns. I prepared questions for the upcoming evaluation meeting. Professional. Thorough. Fair. They came in confident. Too confident. 3 executives in expensive suits, carrying leather portfolios, shaking hands like they owned the room. My father wasn't with them. He was too senior for client meetings now, but I recognized his influence in every slide. Recycled presentations. Assumptions baked into every projection. No curiosity about our changing needs. No adaptation to new industry standards. They talked about history, loyalty, partnership, words that sounded good but meant nothing without performance to back them up. I asked questions. How would they address delivery delays? What improvements were planned for customer service? They gave rehearsed answers. Vague promises. Nothing concrete. One executive, a man named Harrison with silver hair and a practiced smile, joked halfway through the presentation. "We've been your safest bet for years," he said, chuckling. "Why fix what isn't broken?" Safe. That word again. The same word my father had used to describe every choice he'd ever wanted me to make. Safe jobs. Safe relationships. Safe ambitions. I wrote it down in my notebook, not because it offended me, because it revealed everything. They weren't competing. They were coasting. They believed the contract was theirs by default, that history mattered more than performance, that we needed them more than they needed to earn us. Other vendors came hungry. One company sent a team that had studied our business model, identified inefficiencies in our current partnership, and proposed specific solutions with measurable outcomes. Another presented cost savings projections backed by data from similar clients. A third offered technology integration that Hartwell hadn't even mentioned as a possibility. They didn't assume loyalty. They earned interest. They respected the process. They treated the renewal like an opportunity, not an entitlement. I took detailed notes on every presentation. I compared proposals side by side. I built spreadsheets that removed names and focused purely on performance, innovation, and value. The differences were stark. The evaluation committee met 3 weeks later. 5 of us around a conference table, reviewing every vendor proposal. I presented my analysis without mentioning my father or Hartwell by name until necessary. Just facts, performance gaps, cost comparisons, innovation metrics. When we reached Hartwell's file, I disclosed my connection again, offered to recuse myself from the vote. My supervisor shook her head. "You've been the most thorough analyst on this project," she said. "Your recommendation stands." The vote was unanimous. Proceed with transition to a new vendor. I didn't vote emotionally. I voted factually. And the facts were clear. Hartwell hadn't earned another year. Family dinner happened 2 weeks later. My mother had insisted, sent 3 text messages I couldn't ignore without causing drama I didn't need. I almost canceled, but something made me go. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the quiet part of me that wanted to see his face when reality finally caught up to his arrogance. My father bragged louder than ever that night. "Renewal's a formality," he said, cutting into his steak. "They need us. 8 years of partnership doesn't just disappear." My brother agreed. My mother smiled. I chewed slowly, swallowed, said nothing. Let him talk. Let him believe. The notification would go out in 3 days. The termination notice went out the following Monday morning. Standard business language. Professional tone. No personal commentary. "Thank you for 8 years of service. After careful evaluation, we've decided to transition to a new vendor. 60 days to complete handoff. We appreciate your partnership." I wasn't copied on the response from Hartwell. I didn't need to be. My part was done. The decision was made. The contract was ending. And somewhere across town, in an office I'd never visited, my father was learning that safe wasn't safe anymore. That assumptions had consequences. That the world had moved on while he stood still laughing. I heard about the fallout secondhand. My mother called, voice tight and confused, asking if I knew anything about TechCore Solutions. I told her I worked there. She went quiet. Then, she said my father's company was laying people off. Restructuring. 20% of staff gone by end of quarter. He'd come home silent, she said. Hadn't talked in 2 days. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated or satisfied or any of the emotions I'd imagined. I just felt tired, and quiet, and strangely sad for the man who'd raised me to be small because he couldn't imagine me any other way. My phone buzzed 3 days later. My father's name on the screen. I stared at it through 4 rings. Watched it go to voicemail. Listened to the message an hour later. His voice was different. Smaller. "Eliza, we need to talk. This TechCore situation. I know you work there. I need to understand what happened. Call me back." I saved the message. Didn't delete it, but I didn't call back either. Boundaries are power. And for the first time in my life, I had both. I didn't owe him an explanation. I didn't owe him my time or my energy or my guilt. I had done my job. Professionally. Fairly. That was enough. 6 weeks later, I was promoted. Not because of the Hartwell contract. Because I'd been right about everything else too. 3 other vendor evaluations I'd led had resulted in better partnerships, cost savings, improved performance metrics. My supervisor recommended me for senior procurement analyst. The director approved it without hesitation. More responsibility, better salary, an office with a window, recognition for competence, not compliance. I didn't celebrate loudly. I just sat in my new office that first morning, watching the city spread out below me, and felt something I'd never felt before. Not happiness exactly, just the absence of needing anyone's permission to exist. Family dinner stopped. No one explained why. No formal announcement. Just weeks passing without the usual Sunday invitations. My mother sent occasional text messages asking how I was, but never mentioned my father. My brother stopped responding to my messages entirely. I didn't push. I didn't ask what they'd been told or what my father had said about me. Silence, I was learning, could be a gift. Space to breathe without judgment. Freedom from performing gratitude for scraps of conditional approval. I miss my mother sometimes. The version of her that existed before she chose peace over protection. But I didn't miss the dinners. I didn't miss shrinking. An industry article mentioned the transition 4 months later. TechCore Solutions announces strategic partnership with Velocity Logistics. New vendor. Stronger outcomes. Improved delivery metrics. Cost reductions. The article quoted our director praising the procurement team's thorough evaluation process. My name wasn't in it. That was fine. Better than fine. I didn't need recognition. I didn't need my father to see my name and connect the dots and realize what I'd done. The work spoke for itself. The results mattered. And somewhere in a file cabinet on the 14th floor, my analysis sat documented, professional, and unassailable. That was enough. It hit me one morning, not with joy but peace. I was making coffee in my apartment, sunlight coming through the window, NPR playing softly in the background. Just an ordinary Wednesday. And I realized I had won without ever raising my voice. Without confrontation. Without needing him to apologize or acknowledge or understand. I had simply moved forward, built something, become someone who made decisions that mattered. The girl he'd laughed at didn't exist anymore. Not because I destroyed her, because I'd outgrown her. The realization didn't make me cry or smile. It just settled into my chest like truth. Quiet. Certain. Mine. My father lost the job that had defined him. I heard it through my mother 6 months after the contract ended. Hartwell had restructured completely. Senior management took the fall for losing their biggest account. He'd accepted early retirement. 58 years old. Too young to stop. Too old to start over. The authority he'd hidden behind was gone. The bragging rights. The certainty. The laugh. No apology came. I didn't expect one. Men like my father don't apologize. They justify. They blame. They rewrite history until they're victims of circumstances beyond their control. I didn't need his apology anyway. I needed my own peace. And I'd found it. What I gained mattered more than what he lost. Quiet confidence that didn't need external validation. Financial independence built on my own decisions. A career constructed on competence, not approval. Relationships with colleagues who valued my insight. A life where I didn't shrink to make others comfortable. I started running in the mornings. Joined a book club. Traveled alone to Portland for a weekend and didn't tell anyone where I was going. Small freedoms that felt revolutionary. I stopped checking my phone anxiously. Stopped rehearsing conversations. Stopped waiting for permission to take up space. The transformation wasn't dramatic. Just steady. Like watching ice melt. Inevitable. The contract ended the joke. Not with revenge, but with reality. I didn't destroy my father. The market did. Progress did. His own assumptions did. I was just the analyst who read the data and told the truth. If there's a lesson, it's this. When people laugh at your decision to leave, it's because they can't imagine you winning without them. They've built a world where you need their approval to exist, where your success requires their permission. So they laugh. They predict failure. They wait for you to come crawling back. And when you don't, when you build something they never saw coming, the laughter stops. Not because you prove them wrong, because you stop needing to.